Today we are talking about the single most requested loudspeaker on the channel. That's right, we're reviewing the Klipsch Cornwall 4. Introduced in 1959, the Cornwall was designed to be a full-range alternative to the HERESY. That's right, the Cornwall was intended to be a center channel speaker, resting between a pair of Klipsch horns. And while I am sure people have used the Cornwalls in this way over the years, it's not typically how one views the speaker nowadays. Now, like all Klipsch Heritage loudspeakers, the Cornwall is designed and assembled in Hope, Arkansas. It is constructed of MDF with real wood grain-matched veneer over top, making book-matched pairs. Now, like all Heritage products, the Cornwall comes with a 10-year manufacturer's warranty, which will no doubt appease audiophiles who worry about product longevity. Now, if you're looking at these and going, wait a minute. Way back when we were still in Austin, we knew we wanted something special and one of a kind for our new home, and so we reached out to Klipsch to see if there was a way to get something other than their standard Heritage wraps, and we found out something that even we didn't know. I mean, it's not really something that Klipsch advertises, but that is that all Heritage products can be customized. We chose a light maple veneer to complement the desert vibe of our new space, as well as the lamb's wool grill, which is something we borrowed from our old Forte 4s. Obviously, this does add to the cost, not to mention lead time, both of which are going to be dependent on selection and availability. Of course, you can still go with one of the standard finish options, which are walnut, cherry, or black, but it is nice to know that there is a way for you to really make these speakers your own. This being our 5th Klipsch Heritage loudspeaker experience, I feel like we have a pretty good feel for the line. And while I have not heard the Klipsch horns in my own home, nor the brand's new flagship Jubilee, each Heritage speaker brings a very unique musical experience. And while there are some sonic similarities, there are enough differences that each speaker fills a unique niche, one that will no doubt appeal to listeners in very specific ways. But let's try and break it down. Now, seeing the Cornwall's large 15-inch woofer and sizable cabinet, you may be thinking to yourself, this speaker is going to have real weighty bass. I mean, it's rated down to 34 Hertz after all, but when it comes to bass, there are more authoritative loudspeakers. And while the speaker's ultimate bass extension is going to be a bit room dependent, the Cornwall's low end does appear to roll off slightly between 50 and 40 Hertz. Yes, it does play down to 34 Hertz, but just not with the same vigor as it does 50 Hertz, which is basically the frequency range where subwoofer-like bass and bass meet. So while the Cornwall's massive woofer may trick you into expecting a thunderous, bowel-shaking bass experience, it's actually more lively, albeit a tad boosted, which we're going to get to in just a moment. There is a sense of finesse to the bottom octaves that at first caught me off guard. Listening to live jazz recordings from the likes of Go-Go Penguin or Abe Rounds demonstrated a pluckiness that was a lot of fun. Even driven by the Fleawatt deckware, the speaker's massive driver proved to be incredibly nimble and textural, allowing instruments like double bass and kick drums to shine, though admittedly, if I wanted to hear and feel the air pressure that follows the strike of a kick drum pedal, a subwoofer was required. And for that, we used a single SVS 3000 micro. Now, less surprising was the mid-range, and I don't mean that as a negative because it's not. I'm more or less just used to the mid-range performance of this particular driver because it's eerily similar to that of the Forte 4. And like the Fortes, it is the Cornwall's mid-range that makes this such an addictive loudspeaker. Vocalists have a presence, one that is so immediate, it's easy to forget that you're listening to a recording at all and not a live event. That transparency, it's born out of its speed and detail and not out of a wholly neutral or colorless tone. Like the Forte 4's, placement of the Cornwalls is the key to getting the mid-range just right. The mild rise in bass presence where the two drivers cross over can and does cause some low mid-bass detail to be lost. Place the speakers in your room poorly and you run the risk of overshadowing some of the mid-range, resulting in a warmer but woolly sound. Too far out and the bass becomes anemic, skewing the whole speaker's tone more towards the treble, though you may appreciate the newfound mid-range clarity. Also, toe-in, it can have a dramatic effect on mid-range focus and clarity as well. Straight ahead results in a broader, softer sound. Toed in directly at your listening position equals near scalpel-like focus. With respect to the tweeter, I like it. Due to the Cornwall's crossover design, the tweeter is most noticeable from around 5K and up, lending a greater sense of detail, intelligibility, and sparkle to the mix, but not in an overtly forward or outright aggressive way, though admittedly, it doesn't roll off quite as much as the ribbon tweeter found in the Wharfedale Elysians. The small tweeter adds a sense of brilliance to treble-leaning instruments like, say, cymbals and flutes that, like the midrange, sounds convincingly live. Moving on to soundstage and dynamics, the Cornwall delivers. It can cast a huge soundstage, one that is capable of absolutely filling both small and large spaces alike. What I wasn't prepared for was just how effortlessly they could disappear, sounding at times more like two-way stand-mounted speakers than the massive three-way speakers they are. Details between the speakers is great, though center focus does improve with some toe-in. Now, dynamically, do we even need to go here? Nothing can really touch the Cornwalls in terms of dynamic shifts, unless, of course, we are talking about the SCALAs, which is just a hair better or faster on the attack. But at or near its price, the Cornwall has virtually no equal when it comes to its dynamic reflexes, both big and small. Which brings me to how the Cornwall compares head-to-head with its siblings, the HERESY 4, Forte 4, and even the SCALA. The SCALA is still my favorite in the line, and in the right room, which ours still isn't, it is a transcendent loudspeaker, one that has left an indelible mark on me. That said, the idea that the Cornwall is a mini SCALA, I think, is false. The Cornwall has far more in common with the Forte 4, which makes sense after all. The SCALA is a fully horn-loaded speaker, whereas the Cornwall and Fortes are both hybrids, relying on traditional woofers for their low end. Because of this, the Cornwall plays notably deeper than the SCALA, but its bass is more boosted and thus requires more careful placement to get the best results, whereas the SCALA were actually more forgiving of the room and their placement in it. Going back to the Forte 4, I'm not going to mince words. It is my belief that the best Klipsch Heritage loudspeaker, pound for pound, is the Forte 4. Yes, the Cornwall plays lower, but only marginally so. From the mid-range on up, these two speakers are very evenly matched. The Forte's smaller size and more manageable weight will likely make them more suitable to more environments, even taking their special placement needs into account. Couple that with their lower price tag and they become a no-brainer in receiving my outright recommendation if you're trying to decide which Heritage speaker may be right for you. As for the HERESY 4, I will never turn my back on this speaker, and I love it still, but it's not really comparable to the Cornwall. If you're tight on space and you want to enjoy the immediacy and presence of a horn-loaded speaker with arguably more Heritage character than, say, the 600M Mark II bookshelves from Klipsch's new redesigned Reference Premier line, then check out the HERESY 4. But if you're thinking you can just add a sub and get Cornwall or even Forte level performance, I'm going to say no. If Forte or Cornwall is what you are chasing, save your pennies until you can buy one or the other. But in the end, none of this really matters because this whole video, much like our review of the SCALA loudspeakers, has been a feeble attempt to quantify something that is unquantifiable, and that is personal choice. I wanted the Cornwalls, not for review, but for me. I wanted them. These are my speakers because when left to my own devices, this is the type of sound I like. Is it perfect? No. You can best even a speaker as iconic and as capable as the Cornwall for half to even a third as much. Hell, the Polk R700 proves that. But like our Pioneer 780, which originally belonged to KRISTI's father, the Cornwall has just become more than another speaker to me. It's an investment in my own personal audio history, one that I will no doubt pass on to another when the time comes. And I think that's why I'm so taken with the Klipsch Heritage line, because of that sense of heritage, that feeling of occasion that comes through each and every time I hit play. There's nothing modern about listening to a pair of HERESYs, Forte, or Cornwalls, but there is something uniquely special about them, which is why they continue to be my favorite, perfectly imperfect loudspeakers, because they do more to stimulate my soul than just about anything. So that's it. That is now my take on the Cornwall 4 loudspeaker, but now I'm very curious what KRISTI thought of them.
Well, just to get the obvious out of the way, I think these are stunning.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love the finish. I think Klipsch did an amazing job finding a way to like bring our aesthetic into their own, thing.
Yeah.
And I would love to see, this is like whenever I've talked about in the past in other reviews about Klipsch finding ways, or any brand really, finding ways to bring a little bit more of a modern aesthetic to their own design language. Like, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we went with the lamb's wool, the lighter grill. I think it goes great with this particular finish.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because this isn't the standard.
No.
So I just think they're gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's funny. I believe the gentleman or people that built this particular pair, they sent us a message saying that they thought that the customization and the combination of the materials was some of the prettiest that they've done on any of their speakers so far.
Oh,
so
really?
I really appreciate that little kind of note, and I appreciate them labeling the back of the speaker to reflect the changes that were made cosmetically, because they're all kind of filled out by hand, and I thought that was really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Moving to the sound, to be honest, I've really struggled with what to say about these speakers.
Okay.
And it's not because I don't like them, because I do. I think they're very, very good. For me, I think this was a perfect example of when expectations meet reality.
Ooh, okay.
I honestly thought that there would be this big difference, like similar to what we experienced when we went from the Hereses to the Fortes, and ultimately the SCALA.
Yeah.
I expected a wow moment. And I mean, I was wowed by the finish, for sure.
As soon as we took them out of the box.
Yeah, as soon as we took them out of the box, I was like, oh my God, these are
amazing.
Yeah, these are like perfect.
Yeah.
But when we started listening to them, I don't know if I would say I was disappointed. It just, there wasn't the big difference. I guess I just expected this like jump in sound performance.
Yeah.
And honestly, I really blame myself. I do not blame Klipsch for this at all. I think that it's my fault because I think I bought way too much into what the comment section was saying.
So you're saying that you think that you were influenced by what people said to us on the channel in the comments, like, just wait till you get Cornwalls. Just wait till you get Cornwalls.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure that this happens to a lot of people.
Sure.
There's always the next best thing, right?
Right.
And I think I'm probably more shocked at my own, like,
You went there?
I fell for that crap?
I don't think you fell for it. Look, if I may.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt, but if I may, our journey with the Klipsch Heritage products, like I say in the review, has spanned five products, but it's been different. Like, we went Heresy 3, Heresy 4. Then we went SCALA.
Yeah.
So that right there that's a huge delta. Like, to even say that those two are comparable is not really possible. But then we went from SCALA to Forte 4. And I think why we were blown away by the Forte 4, unlike the Heresy 3 and Heresy 4, the Forte 4 surprised us with how much of the things we loved about the SCALA it was able to capture. Whereas, like you just said, the Cornwall seems more like an incremental improvement over Forte. And therefore, had we gone from SCALA to Cornwall, we probably would have had the same Forte 4 experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. And I think it's just managing my own internal expectations was something I didn't quite do. So yes, I totally agree with you that these are the similarity between these and the Fortes. It's very close.
Yeah.
And honestly, I believe that it makes the Fortes become the real value in the lineup. And you kind
100% agree with you.
You kind of alluded to that in your part of the review.
Yeah.
Now, the SCALA is still my favorite of all the Heritage speakers that I've personally heard. I've never heard the Klipsch horns. I know you've heard them out in the wild, but I've never even heard them, so I'm not going to speak to that. But of the ones that I've heard, La Scala is my favorite. But if we were doing this all over again and we're picking a speaker from Klipsch to customize, I would do this with the Fortes if I knew what I know now. I think people are going to really want to know, well, what about this speaker or what about that speaker? Because
we're to the comparisons I didn't
yeah, because
make.
you didn't do a whole lot of that here. The comparisons were more within the line of heritage speakers, which I think makes sense. And you and I talked a bit about this the other night. So I think that this is an opportunity for you to maybe go into why you didn't do a traditional comparison section in your portion of the review, and maybe talk about how you feel these compare to speakers. Maybe I can only imagine that people are going to want to know a little bit more about the R700s from Polk, the Elysians from Wharfdale that we just reviewed, considering that these are going to be, they're cheaper, but
they're an equal investment in both money, size, configuration. Yeah. The reason I didn't compare the Cornwall to anything else but other heritage speakers was because I feel like we're in a pretty unique space here, in that we've had all of them for some time. We've brought you all individual reviews, and now I feel like we can maybe, I don't want to say a buyer's guide, but we can kind of help to guide you if you've been on the fence about any of these speakers. And I felt that would be most helpful, and maybe even a little bit surprising to you guys, that ultimately, while landing on the Cornwalls for us, my buyer's advice, if you're shopping the Heritage line, is to go with the Forte 4. I don't know, maybe some of you saw that coming, maybe some of you didn't. As far as why I don't typically compare high efficiency loudspeakers, it doesn't even mean Klipsch, just high efficiency loudspeakers in general, to stuff that is a little bit more common, I don't want to say mainstream, is because there is just something about high efficiency loudspeakers, specifically high efficiency loudspeakers that use horns, that is very difficult to quantify. And frequency response and all of this stuff doesn't really tell you anything, because there is a sensation of listening to speakers like this that standard dynamic driver or traditional dynamic driver speakers simply can't replicate. And some of you are going to say that's a good thing. Some of you are going to say that's a negative thing. I don't judge. I don't really care. But it is my belief that when it comes to horn-loaded speakers, there is a sound, and you either really, really like it or you don't. And so I believe that it is kind of unfair to take something like this and compare it to something that is not horn-loaded in the slightest. But I understand that's not going to be ultimately the most helpful for all of you who may be trying to decide, say, R700s, are they good enough? Should I go here? Should I go there? Blah, blah, blah. So compared to the R700s, I'm not going to mince words. At around $2,000 a pair, the R700s continue to be very, very difficult to beat. They are notably easier to live with. They are notably easier to set up, and they sound good across every genre of music or movies, and they are also way, way more forgiving of the quality of your source material. And that's not to say that the Klipsch speaker is bright or it's fatiguing or it's brutal or whatever those buzzwords are that some people like to throw out. It's just the nature of high sensitivity speakers. There's not a lot for bad things to kind of get swallowed up in, if that makes sense. So I think on points, I think when you compare performance to price to ease of use, the R700 is arguably the better speaker. But if you are building a system and you're doing all of the little things just so, and you're creating an experience, one that you're going to very heavily curate, if you will, and only do the best of the best, then the Cornwalls are fantastic. So are the Forte 4s or any Heritage product, even, you know, the SCALA. So that's my take on like the R700. Like the R700, the Elysian 4s are better across a wider range of genres. They're easier to set up despite being big, bulky, and heavy. They are a little less critical to placement, and they're going to have a much more studio-like sound versus live. And some of you will like that. Some of you are like, no, it's all about the live, the sensation of the live recorded event. And you give these things a live album, MTV Unplugged Nirvana, Legs and Boots tour from Tori Amos, and you were there. It really does. You sit in your listening chair, and it really does feel like you are at the show. And I've been at a couple of these shows, and it's really fun to experience it in your living room that way. That said, it's not like you can't experience similar through, say, the Elysian 4s, only the Elysian 4s are also going to work on something like Screen Violence, or maybe a favorite recording from the 80s or the 70s that, you know, let's face it, we loved it as a child, but, you know, maybe it's not the greatest quality. And so that's where you really have to sort of sit with yourself and ask yourself, like, what kind of listening experience do you want? That is now our take on the Klipsch Cornwall 4. What did you guys think? Was it worth the wait? Did you know we had these? Because we've kept these a secret. I think so far this has been the best kept secret on the channel. Anyway, tell us what you think. And my question of the day, it's pretty simple. Of all of the Klipsch Heritage speakers, either that we've reviewed on this channel or that are just in existence, which one do you think is best? Curious. I wish we could add a poll to the comments.
I know.
That would be so helpful here. But let us know, sound off, which Klipsch Heritage speaker is your favorite. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Go ahead and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that KRISTI left for you down below, or you leave us a thanks, or you become a member of this channel, know that all three of those ways, along with just watching and hitting the like button, are great ways that you have shown your support for this channel and the work that we do here. And both of us, thank you very much for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile, and that's it. That's it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. Bye.